There was once a tailor who never made a mistake, not because he was perfect, but because he never stopped stitching. Come close, my dear, sit by the lamplight. If this story warms you, if it reminds you of someone who never gave up, don't forget to subscribe before the lamp runs low. Tonight's story is about patience, pride, and one quiet man who sewed meaning into everything he touched. This is the tailor's last stitch. The town's last tailor's shop stood between a bakery and a clockmaker's store, smelling faintly of starch, rain, and old dreams. A faded sign above the door read Marshall's Tailoring since 1952. Inside, bolts of fabric lined the walls like rainbow soldiers gone to sleep. The counter was worn smooth by decade of elbows and folded bills. And in the middle of the shop, hunched over a wooden table, sat Marshal Duval, the last tailor of Rio Magdalene. He was small, weary, and dressed in a suit older than most of his customers. His hair was white, his fingers thin, his glasses slipped down the bridge of his nose. Every movement he made was precise, as if he feared even his breathing might wrinkle the fabric. That evening the rain tapped softly at the windows, and the needle in his hand glimmered under the yellow lamp. He was finishing a jacket, navy blue wool, silver thread at the cuffs, for a customer who hadn't been back in years. He didn't look up when the doorbell jingled. "Monsieur," came a voice, hesitant, young. Marshall turned slightly. In the doorway stood a boy of perhaps 17, holding a folded letter and an expression that tried to be brave. "Oh, youth always arrives like an unexpected draught through the door, uninvited, unprepared, and somehow exactly what the room needs." The boy stepped forward. "Are you Monsieur Duval?" Marshall nodded. "I am whoever can fix what is torn, if you have the patience to wait." The boy smiled faintly. "Then you can help me. I need a suit for tomorrow." Marshall squinted. "Tomorrow? Impossible. A proper suit makes time. Young man, even the thread needs to reset overnight." The boy hesitated, then placed the folded letter on the counter. "It's for my father's funeral." The needle froze in Marshall's hand. He looked at Boy's trembling fingers, the damp cuffs of his sleeves. "You could have borrowed one," Marshall said quietly. The boy shook his head. "He was your customer. He always said you stitched honestly into his jackets. Marshall gaze softened. Your father was? Daniel Moreau, the boy said. The name hung in the air like a dust in light. Daniel Moreau had been Marshall's best client, a man of laughter, of worn hats, and of endless kindness. He was not rich, but he always paid in advance. A tailor's time is worth more than gold, he used to say. Every spring Daniel would come to the shop, sit on the same stool by the mirror, and tell stories while Marshall measured him. He talked about his wife, his son, his garden, ordinary things that made Marshall secretly happy to listen. When his wife passed away, Daniel wore black for a year but still came by, saying, I need a lighter fabric, Marshall. The world is heavy enough. Marshall had made Daniel's wedding suit, his morning coat, and the last jacket he ever ordered. The one now lying on the table, half finished. Marshall cleared his throat. He never came to collect his jacket. Said he would return after visiting his son at the academy. The boy lowered his eyes. He never made it back. For a long time, the only sound was the ticking of the clock. Finally, Marshall stood. Then we shall wear this one, my finest work. But it's not done, the boy said, and there's no time. Marshall adjusted his glasses. Time, he murmured, is a cloth you can stretch when your heart demands it. He motioned to a stool. Sit. I will need your shoulders. You and he were the same frame, yes? The boy nodded. Almost. Then, said Marshall, we will finish it together. They walked late into the night. Marshall's hands moved with the patience of a man who had stitched through wars and wedding alike. The boy held pins, fetched thread, trimmed edges. At first they barely spoke, then slowly words began to fill the silence like warm light through curtains. Did he talk about me? The boy asked. Marshall nodded. Always. Said you'd outgrow him in every way except humility. I see he was right. The boy smiled faintly, eyes damp. He used to say I should learn to fix things instead of throwing them away. I never learned. Marshall looked up. Then tonight you will. He handed the boy a needle. Your first stitch, Moshe. The boy hesitated. I'll ruin it. Marshall shook his head. Perfection is a myth. Patience is an art. Together they stitched the cuff, one slow thread at a time. There are nights when work becomes bare, and sometimes the needle means more than fabric. Hours passed. Rain turned to fog. The clock struck midnight. Tell me, said Marcel, why didn't you visit sooner? The boy sighed. He wrote to me often. I didn't answer enough. Always busy with exams, frames, and excuses. The last letter, he said. I left it unopened. Muscle paused mid-stretch. And now? The boy pulled the same letter from his coat, creased, damp from his palm. He unfolded it carefully. Inside was a single line in Daniel's familiar script. When you wear your first suit, remember the man who believed in you before you did. The boy swallowed hard. He must have known. Muscle nodded slowly. A father always does. They continued sewing in silence. Each stitch felt like an apology accepted. A conversation resumed. At around 2 in the morning, Mercer's hands began to tremble. He set the needle down, rubbed his wrists. The boy reached for the jacket. Let me finish this part, he said softly. Mercer hesitated. The last stitch must be perfect. The boy smiled. It will be. He threaded the needle, hands unsure, and made a small, clumsy stitch along the inner lining. Then, with care, he whispered, For you, Dad. Marcel watched, and for a moment, through the shimmer of the lamplight, he saw Daniel himself guiding the boy's hands. At dawn, the jacket was finished. Marcel brushed the fabric gently, straightened the lapel, and ran a trembling hand over the final seam. It's not flawless, he said, but it is honest. The boy smiled. Then it's exactly like him. Outside, the rain had stopped. The morning light painted the street in gold. The boy packed the suit carefully into his box. But before leaving, he turned to Marcel. What do I owe you? Marcel shook his head. Nothing owed, only something promised. What promise? When you mend something broken, whether it's cloth or heart, do it with patience. That will be the payment enough. The boy nodded, tears catching in his lashes. I will. He left quietly. Bell chimed as the door closed. Marcel sat back, staring at the empty stool. He felt the ache of old age settle into his bones, and yet an unfamiliar warmth filled the room. He whispered, Well, Daniel, your son learnt his first stitch tonight. 2 weeks later, the tailor's shop didn't open one morning. Neighbors knocked, worried. When the constable entered, he found Marcel seated at his table, needle in hand, a peaceful smile on his lips. In front of him lay a small scrap of cloth, white linen, freshly stitched, with two simple words embroidered in silver thread for Daniel, and underneath it a note in Marcel's careful handwriting. Every stitch was worth the wait. You see, my dear one, some people leave behind buildings, others leave behind books, but the wisest leave behind patience stitched into those they have touched. Muscle didn't teach a boy to sew fabric. He taught him to mend the living things. Guilt, grief, distance. With steady hands and softer hearts. And when your tailor's last stitch was done, the world held together just a little tighter. If this story eased your heart tonight, leave your warmth below, subscribe, and come back tomorrow when I will tell you about another quiet soul who stitched meaning into an ordinary life. Until then, be kind to the seams that hold your world together.